Let's briefly go over some ideas in evolutionary ecology that are relevant to us in thinking about forest ecology. And of course, forests are plant communities. They're communities of living organisms. So they're influenced by evolutionary dynamics. One of the first concepts, and this is maybe familiar to you, that I want to kind of allow me to refresh your memory, and that's the niche concept. This is the range of physical or biological conditions that support the presence of a species, and there are two different ways that you can measure it. One is what's called fundamental niche, and this is the full range of ecological conditions or environmental conditions that a species can survive in, and then the realized niche. And the realized niche is where you actually find it. The difference between these two things often comes down to biological interactions. And one of the interesting things about evolution is that species change through time, not just because of changes in the environment, although it's a huge factor. They change because their interactions with other living things are also dynamic. So the realized niche oftentimes is what we're going to be talking about, and it is that physical tolerance plus the biological tolerances. And when I say that, really thinking about competition, something that's very, very near and dear to us in talking about forests. So with the niche, in particular, one of the ideas I want to put some emphasis on is adaptation. And this is the evolutionary mechanism which is responsible for species persistence through time. Adaptation also allows plants to change over the course of generations. This is a change in the way organisms look through generations, and it reflects changing, it can reflect changing environment, changing biological conditions, but all with the purpose of persisting over multiple generations. These adaptations address many problems that plants face. One word that you will hear thrown around in evolutionary ecology is the idea of fitness, and this is the capacity for survival and the survival of offspring. So organisms cannot persist over time unless they are able to have offspring which survive. And the phenotype is the characteristic which is acted upon. This is where the rubber hits the road in evolutionary ecology, and where you have survival over generations. The fitness is oftentimes a function of phenotypes, and phenotypes themselves are adaptations to changes in the environment, physical or biological conditions. So here's some examples of variation in phenotype, and it's just pictures of cats. And you know why it's pictures of cats? Because number one, it's a good example of changes in over time and generations. And two, this is the internet. And looking at cats on the internet, of course, is what it's for. The phenotype here, in this case, is the physical appearance of these cats. These are not fixed over time. And you can see that when you look at pictures of cats. There's, you know, some more cats and some more cats and so forth. What maybe kind of occurred to you at this point is that there is some underlying influence on this variation, and that's that the variation, even in something like a cat, which is a kind of contrived example because it's a domesticated animal, there is variation here which is driven by genetic dynamics. Oftentimes we can talk about the genetics of a specific group of organisms, specific members of a species, and we can understand some aspects of how much that group has the capacity to change. What kind of reservoir of adaptation is there within the code of those animals? And the last kind of the last idea I want to share with you about cats is it's true for all organisms, and that's that gene expression is not preordained, and it's oftentimes environmentally activated. And so that's true with some aspects of cat coloration, and it's certainly true when we talk about plants and forests. Probably the most important thing I want to share with you and keep you thinking about here is that natural selection acts on phenotypes. That's really helpful for us understanding and asking the question, why do forests look the way they do? Uh, it is a directional process, but it doesn't necessarily have a preordained endpoint. Many variations are possible, and there are many possible solutions to the problem of how do you persist over multiple generations.